Milk Minute.
Good morning, everyone. In research, why do we need to write a conclusion? A conclusion is like a final chord in a song. It is a section in a research report where the researcher finds a chance of leaving a lasting impression. It usually includes comprehensive summary of the findings. You have to state your conclusion in clear, simple language. Take note that no new information should be added to the conclusion. It is in the conclusion where you describe the value of your research. What about a recommendation? Why there is a need to write a recommendation in research? The reader is looking for insightful comments to demonstrate that you have been engaged with your research, that you understand your findings, and that you gained knowledge from the experience of conducting your research. This section includes suggestions for what needs to be done as a result of your findings. Recommendations are listed according to order of priority. In listing the references, it allows the author to credit the works of others that directly influence the present work and document any facts that are not common knowledge. And it gives interested readers the information necessary to identify and retrieve these sources in the reference lists. Thank you for listening.
Senior High School on Air.
Senior High School on Air. The frontline of quality and excellent learning.
Excellent learning. You have all the best of the best.
Best of the best of the best.
Madaling umaga, handa na ba kayong matuto?
Handa na po.
Reading and writing.
Pagbasa at pagsusuri ng teksto tungo sa pananaliksik.
Practical Research 1.
English for academic and professional purposes.
Ability and Statistics.
General Biology 2.
Disciplines and ideas in applied social sciences.
Cookery and more.
Senior High School, best of the best.
Best of the best of the best.
Good day, senior high school students. I hope you're in good condition to listen. I know you are. Ready yourselves for another interesting topic in research. We'll venture on another area in Practical Research 1, which you will find enjoyable. I am your radio teacher for today, Eileen Joyce B. Pascual. Few reminders before we start. Make sure that your only focus right now is today's topic and avoid any distraction for the meantime. Please listen attentively. Ready your notes and try to take down important terms as we move along. You should also be aware of the directions for the activities and the quiz, which will be given later. Are you ready? Let's get started then. Before we begin, let's review some essential topics in the previous episode through an assessment. Just write true if the following statement is correct or false if the statement is incorrect. I repeat, choices are true or false. Let's begin. For number 1, conclusion in qualitative research are based from pattern and themes. Again, conclusion in qualitative research are based from pattern and themes. True or false? Item number 2. Conclusion is a type of inferential thinking that derives its validity and truthfulness from your sensory experience. I repeat, conclusion is a type of inferential thinking that derives its validity and truthfulness from your sensory experience. True or false? Next item, an assumption is more important in drawing conclusion rather than logical facts. Again, an assumption is more important in drawing conclusion rather than logical facts. True or false? Fourth item, patterns and themes do not describe the thoughts of the participants. Again, patterns and themes do not describe the thoughts of the participants. True or false? Last item, conclusion plays a vital role in creating recommendations. I repeat, Conclusion plays a vital role in creating recommendations. True or false? Let's now check your answers on our review. Are you excited to know your score? Let's start. For number 1, the answer is true. I'll repeat, true. For the item number 2, the answer is true. Number 2 is true. For the item number 3, the answer is false. I'll repeat, false. For the item number 4, the answer is false. Number 4 is false. And for the last item, the answer is true. I'll repeat, true. Okay, how many did you manage to get? Congratulations to our students who got a high mark. For others, you still have the day to improve. Before we start, if you need to have a bathroom break, do it now because this topic may take a while and you may not have a chance to do so later. While doing that, let's listen to this reminder.
Gusto ko nang mag-aral, gusto ko nang bumalik sa paaralan. Ngunit paano ang gagawin kung may virus pa rin? Manatili sa inyong tahanan, wag na wag pairalin ang sariling karunungan. Magtiwala sa batas ng inyong bansa at nang ikaw ay hindi nawawala. Gusto ko nang lumabas, pero ay bawal pala ikaw lumabas. Bawal lumabas, bawal lumabas, bawal lumabas, bawal lumabas. Manatili sa iyong tahanan para ikaw ay ligtas. Ang kagawaran ng edukasyon ay naghahanda na para sa ligtas na pagbubukas ng klase. Mga mag-aaral, kahit nasa tahanan lamang, ang edukasyon ay maihahatid ng may kaligtasan. Isang paalala mula sa kagawaran ng edukasyon at sa himpilang ito.
And we're back. Our topic for today is all about formulating recommendations based on conclusions and list references. After going through this episode, you are expected to know the guidelines in making recommendations and techniques in listing references. So, let's begin. Imagine yourself being a dating expert who provides advice to people who are having difficulty on how to date someone. One day, a man approached you seeking help on how to win over the girl of her dreams. How would you solve this problem? What advice would you give to the man? Before answering those questions, what would you ask first to the man to be able to give a solid advice? Precisely. Of course, you need information about the woman he's interested in. Before giving your recommendations for her, you need to know the type of the food she wants, her favorite color, the gift she likes, behavior she wants, and so on. Point is, a vital aspect of recommending something is to have knowledge on what you're dealing with. The same can be said in qualitative research. A concrete proof should be the basis of recommendation. What is the concrete proof that I'm talking about? That's right, your conclusion in your study. By now, you must have already known that to be able to conclude in your study, one must collect valid and sufficient amount of data, or in the case of qualitative research, the collection and synthesis of patterns and themes. Only if you have a valid conclusion can you create a good recommendation in your study. Having said that, can you now tell me what recommendation is in research? Certainly. This part of your study is where you'll suggest specific interventions or strategies to address the issues and constraints identified in the assessment. In addition, recommendations should directly respond to the key findings arrived at through data collection and analysis. Also, a process of prioritization is essential to narrowing down findings, and once this is done, recommendations should be developed that align with the most important findings. So now, to be able to write a good recommendation, you must follow a set of guidelines. Following these guidelines will make it easier for you to understand the constructs of this part. Let's begin. Let us start first by enumerating the guidelines needed for a good recommendation. We have 4 guidelines to consider, and that includes: first, the introductory paragraph. Second one is providing a foreseeable solutions. Third is explaining the benefits, and the fourth one is feasibility of the study. Let me repeat once again. The 4 guidelines are: first, the introductory paragraph. Second one is providing a foreseeable solution. Third is explaining the benefits, and the fourth one is feasibility. Let's dig deep through each one, shall we? Let's talk about the introductory paragraph first. When you're creating a literary output, say for example an essay, what do they usually have in common? That's right, they have a solid introduction. The same can be applied in qualitative research. However, the introductory part is a bit different than what you normally would write. Because in most literary outputs, you base your introduction on your idea or opinion. On the other hand, when writing recommendations, it is better to have an introductory paragraph which recalls the conclusion of the study. Take note, what you wrote as conclusion may be briefly written as an introductory part of your recommendation. Why, you may ask? Indeed, because as I mentioned earlier, conclusion and recommendation are aligned to one another, so one part must contain the other one. Let's have an example where your study is all about diversity of perceptions regarding quality school. Your introduction for recommendation can go like this. The conclusions of the research identify a number of issues emanating from diversity of perceptions regarding quality school. The recommendations are the outcomes of extensive interactions with participants and reflections of the researcher. The following recommendations are: then include your recommendation in your study. Another thing to take note is whatever recommendations you're considering must be aligned to the results of your conclusion. So that's it for the introductory part of your study. Let's proceed to the second, which is providing a foreseeable solution. Before we analyze this, the question you must ask first is this: what is the content of your conclusion? Does it portray issues that have risen with regards to your topic of interest? You can look at your conclusion if you manage to finish it and look for similar patterns as what the question asks. Most of the time, problems are uncovered when you analyze patterns and themes in qualitative research. And we know that when an issue arises, we usually recommend something to try to mitigate or lessen that particular issue. Say for instance, your topic is all about waste management in school. Then, the results of your study show that the students were not aware on the proper way of segregating waste. What would you recommend then? Great idea! One recommendation can go like this. The school administration should strengthen the information drive about how to properly segregate waste. Did you notice something about the recommendation? Certainly, the conclusion and recommendation are aligned to one another, suggesting a problem and a solution mechanic. Let's have another example. How about if you have a topic related to school canteen management and have recently concluded that students queuing is a prevalent issue? What would you recommend then? Very good. Your recommendation can go like this. The canteen management should put sufficient signages to direct students where to queue up during break time. I hope you've understood this second guideline. Let's proceed to the next one. The next guideline talks about explaining the benefits. Let's say for instance that after you've conducted your study, because it was so fascinating, other researchers are interested in continuing what you left off in addressing your issue. What would you recommend to your fellow researchers then who are willing to continue your study? Nice idea! As you can see, this is what this guideline covers. When writing your recommendations, you can talk about the steps that should be followed in future studies to bring improvements. Any resources that would be required in the process should be explained as well. You must be specific when talking about what you might be interested in doing in the future with regards to making any potential studies stand out and work to your favor. To further simplify this, you can always mention the benefits of further studies in your field. Talk about how future studies could be used to correct problems with the current research you have completed. You can also explain a need to fill in certain gaps that you might not be able to get covered right now for any reason. You can always use a timeline to help readers understand when potential developments. Say for instance, you've managed to know the practices of the students when properly segregating their waste, but you are missing one aspect that can potentially explain their practices, which is their behavior. Because of the lack of time, you've only included the practices aspect and not the behavioral one. With this, what would you recommend then to the future researchers who wants to continue your study? Indeed, you can recommend to include the behavioral aspect of waste segregation to be able to see the bigger picture. Other examples could be a different setting, a larger sample size, a different method, etc. That is all for this guideline. The last one is feasibility. We already knew that as time goes by, the method by which we acquire data can change as well. This is the point of feasibility. What does it talk about then? Exactly. This includes understanding whether certain ideas should be explored in further detail later on. This works well if you are trying to talk about certain points that might be worthwhile. You could even talk about potential new developments in your field and whether your study is relevant to them or if additional developments have to be incorporated in your work. For example, you could recommend other studies that can help other researchers if ever they wanted to pursue to study. In addition, there are often times when added research would be required to make it easier for study to go forward. Your research plans could include an analysis of methods of the study that could work in the future and what points about the topic could be reviewed in such studies. That is all for the guidelines on creating a good recommendation. Now that we are through with that, we can now proceed to our next topic. Allow me to awaken your curiosity once again. What do you usually find at the last section of books and journals? Nice! We call that as references. Can I solicit your idea then about what reference is? Precisely. References are sources of information that provides essential information for a reader to locate any source cited in the research work. Take note that part of the responsibilities of a good researcher is to recognize or cite all the resource print or non-print at the resource page. Let me ask another question. Did you manage to include all authors that you have cited in your review of related literature to your references? That's good to hear. Remember that whoever author you have included in your study must be included in your reference section to be able to acknowledge the authors and the books they've written. Also, it directs your readers to the exact source of data stated in your study. To proceed, we have different styles of referencing a source, but we will only focus on one style, which is the most common one. Can you guess what is it? Correct! The APA style. Do you know what APA stands for? Exactly! APA stands for the American Psychological Association. I'll repeat, the American Psychological Association. Have you already seen this kind of format in research? That's good to hear. You see, the APA style is also called the author date style. This is often used by researchers in the field of natural science and social sciences. In addition, more and more researchers, regardless of area of specialization, prefer to use the APA style, and because of that, we will only focus on this reference style. Let's now move to the basics of APA. There are plenty of details to discuss, so I want you to listen very carefully. First you need to know is under the APA rule, the reference section should start on a new page regardless of the space remaining on the previous page. Also, type the word references centered at the top of the page. I repeat, it must be centered at the top of the page and the reference section must start on a new page. Are we good? That's great! Another course of action for this style is the spacing and margin. Double space all references list entries and use hanging indent form. Again, double space and use hanging indent form. In addition, the first line of each reference is set flush left and subsequent lines are indented 1/2 inch. How about the arrangement of the reference list? Indeed, it must be alphabetically arranged, not by format of publication but rather by the name of the first author. If in case the author of the book is not known, then the title of the book would suffice. Let me repeat. References must be alphabetically arranged by the author's name or the title of the book if there was no author. Wow, that's plenty of detail to work around. I hope you can still follow. Let's continue. As for the proper way of writing the book information, follow this APA style in this order. First to write is the full author's surname. I'll repeat, surname and not the name. And then the first and middle name initials. Again, initials only. Followed by the date of the publication. And then, the title of the book or the periodical. Then the place of the publication. And lastly, the publisher. Let's repeat the order again. First is the author's surname and his initials, followed by the date, then the title of the book, followed by the place of publication, and lastly, the publisher. Let's look at each one in detail. Let's begin with the author. Rules for the author include the separation between the author's surname and the first and middle name's initials. Remember that the surname and the initials must be separated by a comma. I'll repeat, a comma. And then, the first and middle name initials should be separated by a period. Again, a period. Another rule is if no author is present, use the editor's name. However, if no editor is present, then start with the book or the article title. How about if there are multiple authors? Okay, multiple authors are separated by commas and an ampersand. What do you think is an ampersand? Certainly, ampersand is a shorthand symbol for the word "and". It replaces the word "and" with a symbol that looks like a number 8. That's an ampersand. Say for instance, you have 3 authors, namely Ben Agustin and Juan de la Cruz. How would we write them in APA style then? Let's try it. So first we have Ben Agustin. Following APA style, so we write it as Agustin, then a comma, then the initial B since he's Ben, and then a period, and then ampersand, followed by the second author, which is de la Cruz, and then comma, then the initial J, and lastly, a period. I hope it's clear as the day. Let's move on to the next one. Next are the rules for the date. The date refers to the date of the publishing. So the first rule is always enclose the date with a parenthesis. Again, enclose the date with a parenthesis. And also, if there's no date in publication, then put ND. ND means no date. Both N and D must be in small letters and separated by a period. So, if there's no date, then put N, D. Next, we have the title of the source. The rule for the title depends on the type of literature. For the books and periodicals, title should be in italics. The volume number of the periodical must be in italics as well. For articles, the titles should be in plain text. Again, in plain text and not in quotes or italics. In addition, for book sources, capitalize only the first word of the title and the subtitle for books, book chapters, and article titles. Again, capitalize only the first word of the title and the subtitle for books, book chapters, and article titles. Finally, we have the punctuation marks. Follow the rules for punctuation marks under the APA system as follows. Period after the author's name and title, then colon after the place of publication, comma after the publisher. Finally, end every entry with a period. Again, period after the author's name and title, colon after the place of publication, comma after the publisher, and period after every entry. Did you manage to follow? That's great! So those are all the techniques for listing references. Did you enjoy listening? Let's recall some of the concepts discussed. Will you enumerate the guidelines on creating a good recommendation? Correct! These are: first, the introductory paragraph. Second is providing a foreseeable solution. Third is explaining the benefits. And lastly is feasibility. How about the APA style of listing references? Very good. First, we write the author, then the date, and then the title of the book, followed by the place, and lastly, the publisher. That's it. That's quite a lot of learning for today. Before we start our assessment, let us listen to few reminders first.
Taho! Taho kayo dyan! Di makatulog sa gabi sa kaiisip, damdamin ko'y mayroong lungkot hanggang sa panaginip. Oh, Berto, di ka ba nakatulog kagabi? Hindi nga ho, Kuya Pekto. Dala ho siguro ng lungkot ng pag-iisa dito sa bahay. Di ho kasi makalabas dahil sa COVID-19. Ay... Berto, may 3 bagay na dapat kang tandaan para maiwasan ng lungkot sa mga ganitong sitwasyon. Una, alamin ang dahilan ng iyong kalungkutan. Pangalawa, maaaring pabatid ang iyong nararanasan sa mga taong malalapit sa iyo. Nariyan ang internet para makausap mo sila. At ang pangatlo, ilaan mo ang iyong oras sa mga bagay na ikaw ay magiging abala. Hindi lang pisikal na kalusugan ang mahalaga, Berto, pati pang kaisipan rin. Tatandaan ko yan, Kuya Pekto. Maraming salamat sa payo. Isang paalala mula sa kagawaran ng edukasyon at ng himpilang ito.
Time now to assess what you've learned through a short quiz. Kindly prepare your quiz notebook and write the date today. Set aside your notes and listen very carefully as I only repeat the question twice. Again, I'll repeat the question twice. There are only 5 items for today's quiz, and this will be in a true or false format. Write true if you think the given statement is correct. Otherwise, write false if you think the statement provided is incorrect. Are you ready? Let's begin. First item. No introduction is needed when writing a good recommendation. Again, no introduction is needed when writing a good recommendation. True or false? Second item. APA stands for American Psychological Association. I'll repeat. APA stands for American Psychological Association. True or false? Next item. Referencing includes understanding whether certain ideas should be explored in detail. Again, referencing includes understanding whether certain ideas should be explored in detail. True or false? Fourth item. When referencing, always start with the author's surname. I'll repeat. When referencing, always start with the author's surname. True or false? Last item. In APA referencing, enclose the date with parentheses. Again, in APA referencing, enclose the date with parentheses. True or false? That's it. We're done with your quiz. It's quite easy, isn't it? And since this is now the last episode, we're now going to give the answers right away. For number 1, the answer is false. Number 2, the answer is true. False is the answer for number 3. And for number 4, the correct answer is true. While true is also the answer for number 5. Count your scores now.
Tayo na sa Radyo Eskwela. Tayo na!
I hope everyone learned from this subject. Thank you for listening every day. On behalf of our scriptwriter, Mr. Suhail Farah Muhammad Husin, our technician, and the SDO Isabela RBI production team, I am your radio teacher, Eileen Joyce B. Pascual, reminding you to always be safe. Good day!
Patuloy ang edukasyon para sa ating henerasyon.
Sa daan ng pagkatuto ay walang may iwan.
Kaya halina sa Radyo Eskwela!